Welcome to another reading. Actually, it's a bit more than a reading today. There is a reading from the Science of Mind magazine daily guides for May. It's the 3rd of May. So we're just continuing the readings this month, and they're pretty good, actually. But it just dawned on me that some people out there, because I'm posting on lots of different social media sites, and some people even in my own sphere of, how shall I say, friends, acquaintances, relatives, etc., don't know exactly what Creative Life Spiritual Center is, what it's a part of, what it means. Well, it's a religious organization. It's part of Centers for Spiritual Living, which is a New Thoughts organization. Other New Thoughts organizations you might have heard of would be, for instance, Unity, which you probably have heard of. Divine Science, maybe. There's also a big group in Japan, the name of which I've always seem to forget, and I should know it. It is not Christian Science, although there are some relations there. And it is not Unitarianism. That's different. The Unitarians are excellent at social justice, but they have a different philosophy. They're probably less religiously and spiritually inclined than we are. You know? So, but then again, that depends on the individual. And talking about individuals, I was surprised to learn how wide the views are within different parts of Christianity as to what Christianity is, who Jesus is, and so on. I mean, some of the results, even in mainline Protestant people, were quite amazing, actually. And some of the views were nothing that you would ever associate with Christianity in any way, shape, or form. But at least now, you probably associate it with some of the heresies that happened centuries and millennia ago. But it's strange. So anyway, here is a very brief history of what New Thought is, and therefore what Science of Mind is. Very brief. And then tomorrow I'll continue. I'll give you part of it today and then part tomorrow, and then I'll tell you more about religious science, which also goes by Science of Mind. It's the same thing exactly. So back in the 19th century, a couple of people, well, a bunch of people came along with the ideas of looking at how Jesus operated. And they saw how he was, quote, performing miracles, unquote. But when they got digging down deep into it, they realized Jesus, in most cases, was not performing miracles. What he was doing was he was connecting with people's beliefs, because he would often say to them, by your faith you are healed, or by your faith you're made whole, or it is done unto you as you believe, which he repeated quite a lot. And then they realized that Jesus, when he prayed and when he, quote, healed people, or people were healed in his presence, shall we say, that he didn't ask and plead with God to heal them. He was quite definitive about it. For instance, I've quoted this a bunch of times. When Lazarus is raised from the dead, Jesus didn't say, Father, would you please raise Lazarus from the dead? No, he went in and he said, Lazarus, come out. And Lazarus came out, as far as we know. So a couple of people, and well, actually a bunch of people, but two people in particular latched onto this. And one was a clockmaker in New England called Phineas Parkhurst Quimby, who eventually ended up writing a lot of stuff about what he found out. He actually healed himself, and then he looked back at how he healed himself. And then somebody called Mary Baker Eddy actually came to him, and she got healed. And she eventually went off and she formed what is now Christian Science. So she was the founder of Christian Science. Phineas Parkhurst Quimby didn't found anything, but people took his ideas and they kind of ran with them. And a couple of people who ran with them were the Fillmores, who actually started Unity, but that was more towards the turn of the century there. And then Emma Curtis Hopkins came along. She, for quite a while, she was working with and for Mary Baker Eddy. Then she thought that Mary Baker Eddy's ideas were too constricting, and she started looking out in other directions. And she went off on her own, and she actually had a very successful enterprise. She taught a lot of the new thought leaders, including one who was called Ernest Holmes. He met her actually after he discovered New Thought. And Ernest Holmes is the founder of what is now Science of Mind, Religious Science. So we're going to stop it there, and I'll continue tomorrow on from that. And then I'll give you some of the history of Science of Mind and how it developed and so on and so forth. So that's a brief history. And a lot of it is based on going back to a couple of things with Jesus knowingness that something was going to happen, his total belief in something, and also telling people it's done unto you as you believe. So that was kind of the foundation of all that. So that's a bit of background for anybody who didn't know. And I'll give you some more tomorrow. Or maybe I'll give it to you on Monday. I don't know, because tomorrow is going to be a busy day at our spiritual center. In addition to our service, we have a memorial service. So I don't know what time I'll get out of there tomorrow. So anyway, there we are. So how about the readings again for today? And just as a quick reminder, the readings are by Diana Ensign, Diana J Ensign. She's a Doctor of Jurisprudence, and she's an attorney. But more to the point now, she's actually talking about effectively Science of Mind. And she says, Mind Your Mind. That's the title for today. Mind Your Mind. And the first quote is from Marianne Williamson. I'm sure you've heard of her, who says, you must learn a new way to think before you can master a new way to be. Which kind of makes sense, right? It's putting the horse before the cart and not the cart before the horse. You must learn a new way to think before you can master a new way to be. And Holmes rightly says, where your mind goes, energy flows. Where your mind goes, energy flows. And this is all kind of common sense. And Dan says, I have a button that reads, quote, Mind Your Mind. He says, I keep it on my altar along with other small objects of significance. The button serves as a reminder to be aware of my thoughts. Most of us know when we feel stressed, sad, disappointed, angry, or discouraged. He said, we know that. We can tell. Although there's nothing wrong with any of our feelings, untangling the thoughts that accompany those emotions or feelings, particularly if they lead us down well-trodden, unhealthy paths, is a beneficial practice. So in other words, she's saying, in addition to the emotions, feelings, we have thoughts that go along with them. And then she says, for instance, we naturally feel sad if someone we love passes away. Yes, because we're attached to them. But adding storylines to that sadness may not be in our best interest. Now, this doesn't mean to say that we don't grieve. Grieving is a normal, natural process. And when they say time heals all wounds, it's not a good statement because it's different for everybody. People's grievings for things are completely different. I am still grieving the loss of Reverend Marshall Lehman, with whom I taught a load of classes. And that was like 5 years ago. But adding storylines to that sadness may not be in our best interest, she says. So storylines are those thoughts we add to an event, often including words like never and always. Stories like, they never loved me, or I always have to clean up the mess, fuel our emotional reactions. And then she quotes from Jill Bolte Taylor, PhD, who was a Harvard brain scientist and author of My Stroke of Insight. And if you've never read the book, it's worth it. You don't need to buy books all the time. I'm not discouraging going to Amazon, but what I'm saying is libraries across the country have got the ability for you to actually borrow books physically, but also to go and get digital copies, or you can get audio copies of books free if you're a member of a local library. In My Stroke of Insight, she says, I never knew that no one had the power to make me feel anything except for me and my brain. I may not be in total control of what happens to my life, but I certainly am in charge of how I choose to perceive my experience. And this is the difference between pain and suffering. Pain is a physical sensation, it's experienced in the brain. Suffering is how we deal with the pain. So there is a big difference between pain on the one hand and suffering on the other. And there's physical suffering, there's mental suffering, there's emotional suffering. Switchbud Pl says that the emotions themselves only last for 90 seconds. It's the stories we tell ourselves that keep us caught in those emotional loops. So she said, the next time you experience a strong emotion, breathe. Wait 90 seconds. Then notice what thoughts feed the emotion. Is there a different story you might tell yourself? Consider practices like meditation or journaling, and I would say mindfulness as well, to become aware of the thoughts behind your emotions. As Ernest Holmes points out, where the mind goes, energy flows. So, mindfulness, I think, is the foundation for meditation because mindfulness is what makes us aware of what's actually going in our heads. And then when we sit down in meditation and the thoughts come in, we're aware of what they are and we can either ignore them or just move past them. So, this I think is really excellent. And it's telling you, look, when something happens that's not, it's either good or bad, you're going to get emotions, but those emotions only last for 90 seconds. And if you're aware of that, and then you're aware of the thoughts that actually are attaching themselves to those emotions, and the stories you start telling yourself, then once you're in awareness, you can do something about it. It really does all come back to living in awareness. Why? Because when you live in awareness, you can do something about it. And the affirmation, I allow healing thoughts of love to surround me this day. I allow healing thoughts of love to surround me this day. Well, hope you like the little diversions we had today. I will do some more either tomorrow or Monday, depending on how long I end up being at our spiritual center tomorrow. I'll tell you a little bit more about who we are, what we do. And listen, as always, please take care of yourselves. Tune into Reverent Lisa tomorrow morning at 9:15. Tune into our service at 11 o'clock. You can get all of these on Creative Life Spiritual Center's Facebook page. And if you're attached to it, if you got a link to it, then it's going to tell you when it goes live. So there you are. So until next time, wherever you get this session from me, tune into Creative Life tomorrow. Namaste.